Roll the credits. Okay. So you already know what I'm going to talk about because it's in the title of the video, unless you clicked on this completely randomly, in which case, hi, welcome. Please like, share, subscribe, hit the bell, support me on Patreon. But look, I thought I was prepped for this. I thought I knew what I was getting into. I was commissioned to review this through Patreon, actually a while back. And I'd kind of been putting it off for no particular reason. I just did other stuff first. And I finally got around to this thing. What did I just watch? Okay, so Starchaser, The Legend of Orin. This was a film that I knew really only because Nostalgia Critic did a video review of it a while back. So before I stopped watching Channel Awesome, I did see that. Now, I didn't remember a ton about it, but it looked bad, and it was clearly a Star Wars ripoff. But, I did not understand the degree to which this thing rips off Star Wars, nor did I understand the full level of batch that goes on in this thing. Okay, so, a little bit of context. This thing it's an animated film. It was released in 1985. There were a ton of things that ripped off Star Wars in the 80s. If you're gonna try and rip off Star Wars without having the budget that Star Wars did, especially by the time it wrapped up with Return of the Jedi, then honestly, going animated is probably a good idea. Because for the amount of money that could get you super wobbly sets and really sketchy visual effects, you can just draw it and have whatever you want. So the initial concept of let's animate our Star Wars ripoff, honestly, not a bad idea. But there's a couple of things working against it. First off, it's rotoscoped. Now, if you don't know, rotoscoping means they filmed actors, and then when they did the animation, they are basically tracing over them. Now, there's still animation involved in that. They, in the drawing portion, they do a lot of embellishments that weren't there on the live action actors, but you end up getting very fluid, lifelike movements, sometimes to the point of uncanny valley, without having to worry a ton about getting exceptionally high-level animation talent because they're tracing more than they are drawing from scratch. But one of the problems with rotoscoping is it tends to really limit the kinds of shots that end up being used in the film. Because in animation, you can do all kinds of shots that you can't get in practical filmmaking, but the minute you bring rotoscoping in, you're limited to what you can film actors doing in terms of angles and all this other stuff, and suddenly the film is a lot less visually interesting than it should be in animation. But I'm getting weirdly technical and almost high-minded, here are some of the philosophical problems with rotoscoping. Let's dig into this friggin' thing, shall we? Obviously, the term Star Wars ripoff has been used more than a few times already in this review. It is across the board. It is broad strokes, it is aesthetic, it is specifics, it is disturbingly specific at times. But let's see what I can remember that was clearly all lifted. First off, you have direct analogs, to the point of having nearly identical function and characterization, super close analogs to Luke, Han, Leia, Obi-Wan. You have a sassy robot, although it happens to be a ship this time as opposed to just being a robot. Although you do also have a robot. We'll come back to her. You have a helmeted villain, and then you've got weirdly, oddly, super specific stuff like the villain lifting up and choking somebody to death within the opening of the movie, and what basically is this film's equivalent of "Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope," except it's Obi-Wan Kenobi delivering the dang message. Dag, who is the Han ripoff, his ship, it's not shaped like the Millennium Falcon, but from the back it looks like the Millennium Falcon. These things even have the same effect when they go into light speed and they go... I swear they even lifted some of the sound effects. Oh, and there's also a sword that seems to retract into its hilt. Yeah, let's just toss that in there as well. And that one took me a second to catch because the wrinkle in that is initially Orin finds this sword and just finds it randomly. It's in the dirt. He's a miner and he finds it. And it's just a hilt. And he's like, I must find the blade. But there are times where he swings it and it seems to kill people. And so it's like it's a lightsaber with a retractable blade, but when the blade is extended, it's also invisible. Is basically how it functions. And at first I thought the invisible blade was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Then I realized that it was clearly retracting and going back in like, oh no, it's just a lightsaber that you can't see. All right, let's start talking about some of these characters. Okay, so why don't we start with Orin? There isn't a lot to say. Orin is bland as hell. He might be one of the blandest protagonists since, I don't know, Jen from the original Dark Crystal movie. And not only bland, stupid. There's a reason for that, which is he comes from these people who are trapped in a mine and are used, they labor until they die. They don't know anything other than the mine. He escapes that. So obviously he doesn't really know anything about the world at large around him. That's fine. That gives him plenty of reason to ask lots of questions, except he asks questions that aren't specific to this unique world. They're just like, what's a robot? What's a patrol? He actually asked that. What's a patrol? Like, thank God that question doesn't actually get answered, as if the audience actually needed that explained to him. But you set him up to be an audience surrogate because he doesn't know that much about that world. And he's not asking the vital questions. How do these things that are unique to this world work? He doesn't know what money is, and he doesn't know what a guard patrol is. That's not helpful, and it sure as hell isn't funny. He seems to be motivated purely by what other people say he should do. Mostly by people who die fairly soon after. He has virtually no agency of his own. He just gets shuttled around from point to point. He's useless and uninteresting and just blah. So there's Dag, who's our Han equivalent, and okay. He is trying very hard to be the cooler one. He is more morally dubious. He's got a cigar. He's this kind of guy. But, I'm trying to think if there's a tactful way to say this. There isn't. He anally violates a robot to wipe her of free will and then sells her into slavery. That's not even me editorializing. That is factually what happens. Early on, they kidnap what is described in universe as a fembot. It's just a robot. Why the heck would you build it like that? She has her own personality. She has her own mind. She is objecting to this. She says, you're kidnapping me. You don't do this. And he is poking around in her, trying to reprogram her so she won't be a problem for them. And he asks his ship for advice on where her personality circuits are. The ship tells them they're in her posterior. He opens up her very shapely robotic butt and forcibly pokes around in it until he brainwashes her so she no longer has a problem, and now she's suddenly in love with him. And then as soon as they land the ship, he sends her to the auction house so he can get a cut of her sale. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not adding anything. That's just what he does. And this character, whose name I cannot remember, so I'm just going to refer to her as Fembot. Fembot does come back into the fold, and she remains creepily in love with Dag for the rest of the movie. This is never addressed. The fact that he wiped out her free will, and that her desire for him is completely artificial and forced, never brought up. Not even once. Not even in passing. And then there's Discount Leia. She doesn't show up really meaningfully until halfway into the movie, so I can't remember what the heck her name is. She's Discount Leia. She gets introduced briefly at the auction where the fembot is being put up for sale. Moving on. And she shows up then about halfway into the movie, like helping Orin after Orin crashes. So she finds out what's going on with him. For what he's saying and everything going on, it's not worth trying to explain everything. It's more complicated than it needs to be, and it's not that interesting for it. She comes to the determination that she can't tell her father what's going on because she can't be certain that he will help. So she steals a ship, does not tell her father where she's going, goes on a mission to help Orin free his people, which means she's basically going to start a prison riot. And we find out none of this was done because she wanted to help.
I didn't take you back here because I wanted to help you free your people. I did it for me because I wanted to be with you.
I yelled at the TV. I said, "Lady, do you even know his last name? Because I don't, and I've spent more time with him than you have. What the hell?" And Orin's totally reciprocal, which I would be as fine as that kind of thing could possibly be. Except, like, his girlfriend that he was pining for died, like, what, yesterday? And you're prepared to make out with... Wait, what? There isn't really much to say about the villain. He's basically Darth Vader in reverse. Well, no, he's like a Russian doll Darth Vader, because it starts out with a big helmet, takes the helmet off, he's just a dude, and then later on gets smashed up and the dude's a robot. So instead of looking like a robot but being a person, he looks like a person but he is a robot. Who cares? He's not interesting. Although, he does, like, as soon as he captures Orin initially when Orin's trying to flee the mines, he actually says,
"You will die with the secret. You might as well know the rest of the lie."
Really? Dude, you just said flat out this is the first time in 1,200 years anyone has been any kind of this sort of problem for you at all, and you're gonna chat his ear off about whatever it is you've been spending over 1,000 years trying to hide? Look, those are the major things, but like, I just gotta go through a list of other stuff that just happens, and I gotta go through it. Orin tells a blind kid to run. Yeah. Good advice, buddy. Apparently, the lead villain who's like building an army to take over the universe also responds to minor incidents at the front door personally. A bit of Star Wars ripping off that I missed. They completely yoinked the entire diving of the Millennium Falcon inside the second Death Star thing. There's this weird little fairy thing that one of the things that it does to help them out is basically make a robot shoot itself in the head. And it's not quick. It's like this slow raising up and aiming and what? And finally, we can end it all off with a nice dash of casual racism. Wow! If you want to suffer through this thing, it's viewable for free on this site, on YouTube. I'll put a link in the description. Don't watch it! But that's Starchaser. The Legend of Orin. My God. If you want to see me suffer, you can. You can commission me to review stuff through the Patreon. You can also support me in any amount on the Patreon. All of that helps. It's what's keeping the lights on right now. And like, share, subscribe, all that stuff. Comments down in the description. Comments down below. Whatever. Leave your thoughts. We'll talk about it. But you don't have to do any of it. I can't even think right now, much less tell you what to do. You're the council. I just run the meetings. And until next time, this council is adjourned. Oh my God.